Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Katie, and today I'm doing a really fun video. I saw somebody do this in a video short. I can't remember who it is, but if I remember or find it, I will put it down here. But she did something that was called First Read versus Favorite by authors, saying what was the first one you read by that author, and then comparing it to your favorite. Will they match up? Did you find a new favorite by that author? So I just thought that was such a great idea. And I would love to see kind of like, okay, my favorite authors, do they match up? Like, do they, did the first book that I read still remain a favorite, or was it a different one that I read down the road? I tried really hard to pick only authors that I've read at least 4 or 5 of their books. Now, there are a few that I can't get to because I'm trying to do my best to start an unhaul, and I don't know exactly where everything is right now. So I'm missing like 2 or 3 books that I know I have. I don't know where they are at the moment, but that's okay. All right, let's just go ahead and have a fun time doing this. I have my list here of books. I have a pile of books next to me. We'll see how it goes. The first author is Misu Andrews, and if you don't know, Misu Andrews is one of my all-time favorites. She is a wonderful friend of mine. I love her so much. She could not be not on this list. So the first book I ever read by her was actually her debut book, and that is Love Amid the Ashes. And what is my favorite book by her? Love Amid the Ashes. This has remained a favorite to this day. It's sort of tied with In Feast or Famine by her, but it's still Love Amid the Ashes. It is such a phenomenal debut book, like such an incredible book. She has so much love for history and scripture and research. She's amazing. And so Love Amid the Ashes was my first book I ever read by her and still remains my favorite to this day. And I have read 95% of her books. I still have like 1 or 2 more left to go, but I have read the majority of her books and love them all. But this one remains at the top. Colleen Coble. My first book I ever read by her was Without a Trace, which is book 1 in the Rock Harbor series. And my favorite book by her is still Without a Trace. As a matter of fact, this whole series is at the top of the list. I love pretty much all of her books that I've read. I still have a lot on her backlist, but I've read a good, decent, at least half of her books that I've read of hers, and she is still one of my favorites. She's probably my favorite suspense author, and I just love her work. And Without a Trace still remains my favorite. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is her debut novel as well. So apparently my favorite authors just rock out their debuts. I hope I'm like that when my book comes out. Amanda Barrett. The first book I ever read by her was The Warsaw Sisters, which actually won a Christie Award. I believe this one won. I believe almost all of her books have won a Christie Award. She's just amazing. And I've read all of her books except for one. And The Warsaw Sisters still remains my favorite to this day. This book of 2 sisters during World War II in Poland is such a heartbreaking story, and I love it so much. It's one of my absolute favorite books of all time. And this still remains my favorite. Rachel Hauck, Once Upon a Prince was my very first book by her. I binge read this entire series when I was, I think, in high school, maybe early college. And my favorite book by her is Once Upon a Prince. It still is. It's a toss-up between this book and book 3, I think. Don't quote me, it could be book 2. One of those. But I just love this entire series. It's a phenomenal series. A little bit of Princess Diaries mixed with just sweet fairy tale romance. Love it. So this still remains my favorite book / series of Rachel Hauck's. Toni Shiloh. My first book I ever read by her was In Search of a Prince. And if you haven't guessed it, the pattern is very similar. In Search of a Prince is still my favorite book by this author. It was my first experience by the author, and I love it so much. This is a Princess Diaries retelling, but such a beautiful retelling. Honestly, I love this book so much, and it's such a great story. And the cover is probably my favorite of hers as well. I love this cover. We're breaking out of that pattern now of first books end up being the first favorite. So Angela Hunt, my first book I ever read by her was The Apostle's Sister. And for me, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. But my favorite, which honestly this could be a toss-up as well, but Unspoken by Angela Hunt is my favorite. but I also really, really love The Woman from Lydia. And so it's a toss-up. If you want emotional heartbreak, want to throw a book against the wall, I highly recommend Unspoken. If you want more of just a fantastic historical, little bit of love story mixed with just really interesting storylines, check out The Woman from Lydia. But I put Unspoken as my favorite. For Bethany Turner, I read The Plot Twist first, which is on my shelf. I just can't find it. And The Plot Twist still remains my favorite to this day of her books. As a matter of fact, it actually started as a 3-star, but then it just kept coming back into my mind. And I'm like, no, this book is a 5-star to me. I loved it. And it kind of just kept coming to mind more and more, and my star rating changed, which is very rare. So The Plot Twist by Bethany Turner is my favorite and my first by the author. Melanie Dickerson, my first book, which by Goodreads, I honestly don't know if it is the first. I'm pretty sure it is, but I read The Healer's Apprentice, and I have read every single one of her fairy tale retellings, and that's a lot. The only ones I haven't read have been like her Regency spy trilogies, which those will get read this year. I'm trying. But the one that's my favorite is The Peasant's Dream, which is actually the last book in her fairy tale stories. And it was just so sweet. I ended up hugging the book to myself, like after I read it. I loved it. I still don't own a copy. I have no idea why. But that is my favorite of Melanie Dickerson's. I love her books so, so, so much. Jamie Jo Wright. I actually own every single one of her books. They're just behind some other books, and I don't feel like trying to find them right now. I'm sorry, Jamie. But I do own all of her books, and I've read almost all of them. I think I'm behind by like 3, maybe 4 of all of her books. But the first one that I ever read was Souls of Lost Lake. I know, really, really, really great choice to pick first, right? It's one of her more creepy books, I feel like. But my favorite of hers is The Vanishing at Castle Moreau. That is my favorite. It has Phantom of the Opera feel and just this mysterious castle and these mysterious things happening. I just loved this story, and it's probably my favorite cover of hers as well. Melody Carlson, the first book I ever read by her, I believe, don't quote me because that could be wrong on Goodreads as well, but I believe it was The Christmas Swap, which was one of her Christmas books. She's known for Christmas books, but my favorite of hers is actually Second Time Around. This is an older protagonist love story about a woman who is kind of hitting that point in her life where she's alone, her kids are out of the house, so she decides to sell her house and move into this abandoned building that was, I believe, her aunt's or something, and she makes it into her own shop. And along the way comes this man who wants to buy the shop, and of course a little romance ensues, and it's so sweet, and it is my favorite of hers. I love this one. Sarah Sundin, the first book I ever read by her, I believe was her debut, which was A Distant Melody. And that whole series holds a special place in my heart. I love that series so much. My favorite book by her, though, is Until Leaves Fall in Paris, which is a standalone. I would say standalone because it is, but like there's other characters that kind of pop in here from previous books. But this one is set right on the cusp of World War II, and it's between an American ballerina and a man who owns an automobile shop that's kind of working for the Germans. And it's a beautiful story. The ending, oh man, that ending, it's so good. But this is my favorite of her works. Rachel Fordham. The first book I ever read by her was Where the Road Bends, which I absolutely adored. I fell in love with this author's work right from the get-go. Again, this is, I believe, is it a debut novel? No, it's not. I believe she published a few before this. But this is the first book that I read by her, and it's almost my favorite. But I think Beyond Ivy Walls is my favorite, only because this one I love Otis in this, the male protagonist. He is just such a sweet, loving man who I fell in love with immediately. I loved his character. So Beyond Ivy Walls, but both of these were really, really great. Kimberly Woodhouse. I think Bridge of Gold was my first by the author. Sometimes it's hard to remember exactly, and Goodreads, we try our best. But Bridge of Gold by Kimberly Woodhouse definitely was most likely my first that I read by the author. But my favorite is Set in Stone, which is book 2 in Treasures of the Earth. I love this one because she got me. Kimberly got me good with the antagonist of this book. Was not expecting who it was and just loved it. And the storyline, absolutely loved it. So this is my favorite by the author. It's very rare that you can catch me with a really good shock. Then we're coming down to, well, a lot of these are favorite authors, majority of them. So the next one is Cindy K. Sproul's. And the first book I read by her is This Is Where It Ends. And I actually own all of her books now because I just love them. And I've read them all except for one. So my favorite book, I do love this one, and I love the characters, but my favorite would have to be Coal Black Lies. This one will just break your heart and sew it back up and put a pretty sweet, loving bow to finish off the story. It's such a fantastic story, and I love this one so much. Last but not least is my wonderful author friend. A lot of these, actually, majority of these are author friends. Laurel's Dream by Paperbacks was my very first book by the author. Honestly, it is such a hard decision to make as far as favorites go, because I love Laurel's Dream by this author. I love Some Like It Scott. I love, Cairo's Curse. There are so many books by the author that I love, but I recently read Hope Between the Pages, which is, honestly, I think this might be one of her only ones that's dual timeline, if I'm not mistaken. I've read a lot of her books, not all of them, but the majority of them. And I recently just finished this one, like not even a couple days ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved both timelines, and that's very rare for me to love both timelines, but I just loved it so much. And yeah, so this one, Hope Between the Pages, it might be my new favorite of Pepper's. I don't know. It's really tough choice, but I love them both. So those are what I decided to share with you, because everybody else I've only read between 1 and 3 books from, so I didn't really want to, share any of those. So most of these people I've either read at the very minimum half of their works, at least, unless they've written like 50 books, and it might not be that much. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know some of your favorite authors, and do you remember the first book you read by your favorite author? I would love to know down in the comments. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you all in the next video.